These are the terms of trade. Now, again, what is producer pricing? Producer currency pricing. Producer currency pricing means that H country firms set a price in H currency. And then how much the foreigners pay for that depends on the exchange rate. So that implies that the law of one price applies to both goods. So these deviations from the law of one price expressions, they cancel out, they disappear. And for the terms of trade, it means that the price of the foreign good in the home country is the price of the foreign good in the foreign country plus ET, because you have to translate it into domestic currency. This is the price of the home country good in the foreign country. You have to translate it to the foreign country. That's the domestic price in the home currency translated into the foreign currency, and these ETs, a lot of them cancel out, and that's what you get. Now, by the end of the day, you get QT CPI equals theta H minus theta F, PT FF plus ET minus PT HH plus 1 minus gamma and everything that follows in this expression. So if all firms do producer currency pricing, that's what you get. Now, first thing is, what happens to the terms of trade if the nominal exchange rate goes up? So if you have a nominal depreciation. So this is if ET goes up, if you have nominal depreciation, what happens to the terms of trade? They worsen, quote unquote. They go up. Imports become more expensive relative to exports. Or, put differently, the price that domestic residents have to pay for imports from country F increases relative to what their exports cost. And so exports become cheaper for the foreign customers and imports become more expensive for the domestic customers. What happens to the real exchange rate when ET goes up? And please note, these things are assumed to be fixed because firms set them in advance. So a nominal depreciation generates what in terms of the real exchange rate? Well, if ET goes up, what happens to QT CPI? And this is greater than 0. It's going up as well, right? And that's a real depreciation. So, to wrap up, if ET goes up, then QT terms of trade, well, that's what a bad idea is. Let me. Yes. QT tot goes up, and if theta H is greater than theta F, QT CPI goes up as well. So we have a nominal depreciation resulting in a worsening of the terms of trade, but also you can argue in a gain in price competitiveness because our stuff becomes more attractive for foreign customers and the foreign stuff becomes less attractive for domestic customers. And that in turn is also reflected by a real depreciation if you have a home bias and consumption. So that, is this, you have the nominal exchange rate, you have the terms of trade, and you have the real exchange rate. These are different things, but they all move in the same direction if there's producer currency pricing. Now, suppose that in both countries firms set prices in the currency of the destination market, and that's called local currency pricing, and that these prices have to be set before the nominal exchange rate is realized. do fluctuations of the nominal exchange rate move the real exchange rate in this case? And how do such fluctuations affect the terms of trade and net exports? Well, actually we haven't talked about net exports yet. Well, this is likely to drive up net exports. And the reason is expenditure switching. So if the imported goods become more expensive for domestic customers, and the domestic exported goods become less expensive for foreign customers, then it's quite likely that exports increase by more than imports. Actually, exports go up, imports go down, and net exports go up. So the general story is that anomalies, well, this is probably what most practitioners would have told you, right? We are happy when the Vietnamese dong depreciates because that boosts our net exports. But now you know why that is the case. And you also know the implicit assumptions on which this is based, namely producer currency pricing, right? So we set our price in domestic currency, and if the Vietnamese dong depreciates, then this makes the Vietnamese exportables more attractive for foreign customers, and the importables less attractive for domestic residents, and that drives up net exports. Now let me move to the other whiteboard and let's go into F. Now local currency pricing is a strange thing. Local currency pricing says that PTHH is fixed, but also PTFF, but also PTHF, but also PTFH they are all fixed, at least in the short run. Let me push this down a little bit. Okay. So what is the idea? The idea is you set home producers set a price for the home market, and they set a price for the foreign market. Foreign producers set a price for the foreign market, and they set a price for the home market. So that's local currency pricing, and these prices are determined, say, on January 1st, and then what happens to and then something happens to the nominal exchange rate, but firms do not change those prices because it's very costly. That's the assumption. Well, if that's the case, then QT-CPI equals, and now let me just copy what one did. You have theta H minus theta F, PTFH minus ET minus PTHF. Let me check whether this is the same. Yep. Then you have plus 1 minus, no, I think you did it. Doesn't make a difference, but PTHF plus ET minus PTHH, and then you have plus 1 minus theta PTFF plus ET minus PTFH plus 1 minus gamma dot dot dot. Okay, let me check whether I did things right. HF. Now, importantly, this is fixed, that is fixed. This is fixed, that is fixed. This is fixed, that is fixed. Right? It's prices in, so there's 4 prices being fixed. Secondly, this is possibly different from 0, and it's possibly different from 0 as well. So it's possible that you have deviations from the law from price, and this is why we need market segmentation, right? So the local currency pricing idea is based on the idea that you can do pricing to market. So you set different prices for different markets. And there must be, this would not be sustainable if agents could do goods arbitrage. So local currency pricing is very much based on the idea that goods arbitrage doesn't take place. Now what happens to the terms of trade? What happens to the terms of trade if, whoops, so there's a lot of youngsters up here because Dr. Ha is teaching this big macro undergrad class, apparently. It's kind of nice, right? It's all of a sudden it's getting noisy here. I don't know why these guys are talking, but you probably understand. Okay, so what happens now? What happens to the terms of trade when the nominal exchange rate or the domestic currency depreciates? What happens to the terms of trade? They go down. Right? That's interesting. Right? Right? You have the minus here. What is the bottom line behind that? The bottom line is I didn't switch on the camera. I didn't switch on this. Maybe okay. At least the picture is there. Okay. The terms of trade go down. The logic behind that is you're fixing this, you're fixing that. If you have a nominal depreciation, you get more domestic currency units for any foreign currency units that you earn. Now, since you have fixed the price, suppose you're fixing the price of a BMW at $50,000 and you expect the dollar to be at 1-to-1 vis-a-vis the euro. And all of a sudden, the dollar appreciates. And you have to pay 1.1 euros for $1. This implies that you get 55,000 euros for the BMW. Because you get the $50,000 and all of a sudden it turns into 55,000 euros. So that is like a terms of trade gain. Your good implicitly becomes more expensive. Now the nice thing is, there's no expenditure switching. Why is that? Well, it is because these prices are fixed. So what customers pay is not in any way affected by the exchange rate. Right? So the Americans pay $50,000 for a BMW no matter what the nominal exchange rate does. And so they have the Germans pay whatever they buy from the United States, right? They pay a euro price. That's the price. That's the price of the foreign good in the home country. So that would be the price of the
the American imported good in the home country, that would be the price of the exported good of the home country in the foreign. Anyway, I'm talking about USA, and let's assume, so that would be the euro price of the domestic exportable, and that would be the dollar, that would be the dollar price of the domestic exportable, and that would be the euro price of the domestic importable, if euro area is the home country. Now, importantly, with local currency pricing, there's no expenditure switching because the nominal exchange rate doesn't affect the relative price, because the price is fixed. Now, what does the nominal exchange rate do to the real exchange rate? Well, the point is, we have the nominal exchange rate here, we have the nominal exchange rate there, we have the nominal exchange rate there. And so by the end of the day, that's equivalent to saying QT CPI is, and I'm skipping a few lines, is 1 minus theta H PTFH plus theta F PTHF plus 1 minus theta F PTFF minus theta H PTHH plus ET plus 1 minus gamma dot dot dot. And the nice thing is, while all this is fixed, because of local currency pricing, this thing may move, and so ET goes up, then the CPI-based real exchange rate also goes up. So a nominal depreciation results again in a real depreciation. Because, and please note, with local currency pricing, all these prices are fixed in the short run. And I mean, it's just, you have theta H minus theta F times minus ET plus theta H plus times ET plus 1 minus theta F times ET, and you see that basically what's left is ET. What is the effect on net exports? Well, actually, no effect on net exports. So if we found out that all countries, all producers are doing local currency pricing, then we shouldn't expect too much of an effect of the exchange rate on net exports. And so most macro models are based on the assumption that there's producer currency pricing. That's the story in the Mundell-Fleming model. That's the story in the new open economy macroeconomics models. That's the standard, also intuitive story. But if there's local currency pricing, then in fact, a depreciation is still good for the domestic economy, but only because domestic producers get more out of their foreign sales. Good. Last, G is which, if any, of the potential drivers of real exchange rate fluctuations identified above justify the interpretation of the real exchange rate as a measure of a country's price competitiveness. So that's G. Well, price competitiveness reflected by QT tot. So if the QT tot, if QT tot goes up, then net exports go up. And if QT tot goes down, then net exports are likely to go down. So if imported goods relative to exported goods become more expensive, then it's likely that net exports go up. If imports relative to exports become less expensive, then net exports are likely to go down. And QT tot going up, reflected by QT CPI going up if theta H is minus theta F is greater than 0. So we're talking about the real exchange rate, but what we have in mind is in fact the terms of trade, right? And that, but these guys move in the same direction if we have a home bias and consumption, which is very likely. Now, competitiveness is a very elusive concept, right? There's a famous quote by Paul Krugman where he said this is a completely nonsensical concept because countries are not firms, right? It's not, but in a way, this is a very deeply entrenched term which is used in policy discussions and academic discussions, so I don't want to completely erase it. And finally, last point, summarize the reasons why a real depreciation may have a positive effect on countries' net exports. Well, so QT-CPI may go up because QT-tot goes up, and that drives net exports up due to expenditure switching. And the second reason is that PTNH minus PTTH goes down, and that means that shift of resources from N to T goods, and then you could argue that this also increases exports. This is something that we haven't considered so much. I had one slide on it. I said, suppose we have Pn over Pt go down, right? If this goes down, then that goes up because we have the minus here. Now, if non-traded goods become less expensive relative to traded goods, then there will be a shift in production on the production possibility frontier from non-traded goods to traded goods. So the non-traded sector expands when Pn over Pt goes up, and it contracts when Pn over Pt goes down. And that in turn is likely to boost net exports, right? The Dutch disease story was the Netherlands experienced Pn over Pt going up, and they were shifting a lot of resources into the production of non-traded goods. And that reduced their manufacturing base and reduced their exports big time. So these are the two channels, or these are two channels through which you may establish a relationship between real depreciation and an increase in net exports. So finally, to be very frank, I haven't spelled this out. I'm talking about traded goods, right? And of course, traded goods again are domestic traded goods and foreign traded goods. So if we had been even more comprehensive, we would have taken into account that this has to be dissected as well. But that would have generated even more complicated terms, and I didn't want to do that. Alrighty. Now, this was intense, right? This was 2 hours, and you started, and then compliments on you know, you for joining me on that journey, and let's so how do we continue? Maybe I'll give you a 5-minute break, because I mean, now you're sitting here for 2 hours and want to walk around a little bit and so on. Wait a second. And then I'll spend another 25 minutes lecturing you, and then I'll run away, because we have this, I'm in this selection committee, and I have to, Michael Binder is waiting for me in Frankfurt. Actually, they're starting now. I told him I'll be late, but it's very important, because at the end they put things up for a vote. And then, so now they have the discussion, and then they put things up for a vote, and then the committee has to be complete. And if I'm absent, then there's a problem. That's why I have to run to my room at 3:30. Okay, so let me.
Now the good news is, what I'm going to do in the next 25 minutes is important, but not super complicated. So it's something that you can actually kind of consume. So can I erase? Okay, please. So let me switch on projector.